A swastika banner at a march in London needs to be taken in its context, according to a police officer approached by a distressed Jewish woman. Jocelin Weiss tells me exactly what happened. I'm Jonathan Sacerdoti. Jocelin Weiss, thank you for joining me. Tell me a bit about what happened to you yesterday at the protest in London.
Sure. Basically, what happened was I basically just explored and this was not like a thing where anyone could have been confused. This was no question a hate march. There was nothing peaceful about this. This was a giant mob with screaming and like the most horrifying posters I'd ever seen. And one of the first posters that jumped out to me, and again, I'm no fan of BB, but one of the first posters that jumped out to me was this poster of him with like a Hitler mustache and a swastika on his tie. And I was like, it blew my mind. I took a picture, I took a video of the guy. I got another newspaper from the Socialist Worker, which is really, I think people are pinning these protests just on the Muslim community. The Socialist Worker is really a big part of them as well. I walked along and I just saw like horrifying poster after horrifying poster. I think the icing on the cake was when I saw that giant banner being held that said "Glory to the Martyrs," which is like, I still can't believe that happened. I get to the band shell. They have someone on there who did mention the hostages. Silence. Then they have someone else on there who's like, Allahu Akbar. It's like thunderous applause. And then Corbyn gets up there and like, I'm just like, what the hell is even happening? And I walk back and again, they just get worse. And I see more and more pictures of people with horns and, well, specifically Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer both with horns. Again, which begs the question of like, do you want a government at all? Like, I just like, I maybe pick one. I don't know. So, but these things are just quite blatantly anti-Semitic. And I see so many Met Police just standing around and they've told us specifically if we see a sign that is anti-Semitic to report it. So that's what I did. And I was like, are you going to arrest that guy? And mind you, I didn't know they'd arrested people already, which good. Do they have like a maximum on the number of people they can arrest?
And so when you told the police about this, you took it to a policeman and you said, I've seen somebody with a banner with a swastika on it. And from what I've seen in the video, somebody videoed you because you asked them to at the moment that you realized what he was telling you was quite ridiculous. He said that it depended on the context, right?
Right. So my phone was dead at this point. I kind of felt a bit hopeless. Like it was just quite scary, all of this. I guess in the back of my mind, I was hoping that I would see something that was almost humorous to me. And I guess it was in a dark way, but it was really scary. And I was like, maybe there's something I can do. And I was like, there's so many Met Police standing around. And I was like, hey, just FYI, that's a swastika. But he said, oh, well, we don't have permission to arrest that person. It's not really my job. You should really talk to the guy who's at the place basically where the counter protesters were. So I went back there. And at this point, I've talked to like 4 different officers and they're like, I don't have authority to arrest anyone. Talk to that guy. I don't have authority to arrest anyone. Talk to that guy. I finally get to that guy, like the big head police guy with the yellow badges, right? And I explain what happened and he's like, well, the symbol in and of itself isn't anti-Semitic. It really depends on the context. And this wasn't filmed. I was like, oh my God. And I went to the few people that were left. I was like, I need to ask the Met Police a question because I actually can't believe what I've just been told. And so this really nice woman is like, okay, sure. And she's like, I'll record. And so I asked him the same question, expecting like, because I can't believe that it happened. To be quite honest, I'm still kind of soaking in that this even happened at all. But yeah, so I asked him the same question. I was like, excuse me. So I was told that the swastika in and of itself was not anti-Semitic, and then it depended on the context, which doesn't really seem right. And basically I just asked him to clarify. And he confirmed that, yes, the swastika was not inherently anti-Semitic and depend on the context in which it was used.
Under what context is a swastika not disrupting public order? Could you just explain under what symbol that's not disrupting public order?
I was thinking point otherwise that it is or it isn't. Everything needs to be taken context, doesn't it?
No, but it's a context that had
Why does this swastika need context?
Israel is.
This is my question.
Is it Dominic with the photo?
No, he was not helpful at all. Again, why is a swastika not immediately anti-Semitism? Why does it need context? This is what I'm confused about. This isn't even about Israel.
Hitler is not anti-Semitic too.
In what context is a swastika not anti-Semitic and destructive of public order? That was my question.
I don't have an in-depth knowledge of scientific symbols.
So again, so I was like, I just can't even believe this is coming out of your mouth. But again, we'd been told, oh, jihad is not violent, jihad is not anti-Semitic, intifada is not violent. But this is a swastika. Like, this is a literal swastika. I don't understand how a person can look at a swastika and think, well, I don't know. I mean, the context. And then this guy proceeds to just take out a giant shovel and dig himself into a further hole.
Let's not forget that the swastika symbol is common in esoteric tantric traditions of Buddhism, along with Hinduism, where it is found with chakra theories and other meditative aids. But it doesn't seem like we were looking at some form of Buddhist or tantric meditation in the streets of London on that anti-Israel rally, right?
Right. And it would surprise me if at any, sort of tantric ritual involves a Hitler mustache or a picture of any type of politician depicted with horns. And then he says, well, I'm not really an expert on signs. But then it's like, well, it depends on whether it caused distress. And why would I talk to a police officer if there was no distress caused?
There was literally a distressed Jewish woman in front of him, right?
Right. Like several. Like there were three of us. There were three distressed Jewish women saying, hey, I have seen a swastika.
And just to say, I think even without the three distressed Jewish women, it's a fair assumption that a swastika in an anti-Israel march on the streets of London in a climate where those have been going on for months and Jewish people have been afraid and it's been the subject of international news coverage, I think it's a fair assumption that the swastika might be causing alarm or make people afraid.
Right. I think that's a very fair assumption. And again, like the Met Police have really just... I think it really blew my mind that they didn't realize that are they just not aware of the public's perception of how they've been handling this? I just have to wonder, because again, and someone commented as well, the head guy, the yellow lapel guy had the authority to do something about this and said, well, we don't have the context. And again, it was just, a swastika does not need context. And I specifically asked, I was like, in what context is a swastika not anti-Semitic?
I did approach the police and they claim that the video that went viral was a small part of a longer 10-minute conversation they had with you, in which they claim that they told you that they had actually already arrested that person for an offence connected to a placard, and that the officer then offered to arrange for other officers to attend and accompany you to identify any other persons you were concerned about amongst the protesters, but actually you left when he turned around. So is any of that true?
And I stood there on that spot for like 20 minutes afterward because I was so upset talking to other people who I had been there with. They did nothing of the sort. In fact, I requested that they accompany me and they repeatedly said no.
So I want to ask you about these protests in general, because it's really interesting. There's a lot of debate over how peaceful they are and whether they're hate marches or peace marches, whether they're anti-Israel or whether they're pro-Hamas. How would you characterize what you saw on that day?
The way I would characterize it, I mean, I think this particular demonstration was without question a hate march. I don't know how any person could be confused about that. I think if we're talking about the march against Islamophobia 2 weeks ago, that was like, seemed like maybe 100 people. And on the stage, they're like, racism is wrong. And you wouldn't know that it was a hate march unless you looked at the like paraphernalia they were giving out and the pamphlets about how Jews were evil. I understand how someone can see a demonstration like that and think, oh, this is a peace march. This, no question. I mean, like, the things they were carrying around with, like, if you depict any politician with horns at all, that's the most outwardly anti-Semitic thing you can do. It's like one of the oldest anti-Semitic tropes. If that's the signs that people are carrying around and all this blood dripping everywhere and, it's like, I think that's fairly obvious. Like, this was a hate march, no question. And I don't agree with Suella Braverman on like anything, but these are hate marches. Like, I'm sorry, they're hate marches.
So to play devil's advocate, I assume that some of those people would say, well, horns shows that I think they're evil. Blood is because there's a war going on and they're somehow complicit in it. And what would you say in response to that sort of defense?
I would say, part of me wants to say these people are lying through their teeth and they know exactly what they're doing. But part of me genuinely wonders if there's just, I didn't go to schools in England, right? I don't know what education students have now as to what is and is not anti-Semitic, or what tropes mean what. Maybe a lot of people really don't know what blood libel is, what greed libel is, what any of these, what anti-Semitism really looks like. Maybe there's just a lack of education. I want to think it's the latter, but I'm inclined to think that it's more of the former. And I think they do know. And I wonder if a lot of these people as well are from countries where they don't have any Holocaust education at all, or they get told where, because a lot of the Muslim world is like that. So I think, but yeah, it was a hate march.
And who were the people that you saw predominantly in the march, especially the ones carrying what you saw as the more offensive material?
It was a bit of both. Yeah, there were a lot of people in, hijabs, niqabs, etc. But it was a lot of white kids in keffiyehs as well. It was both. There was quite, I'd say it's 50-50, honestly. That's how I would
did you talk
describe
with any of them?
Yeah, I talked with the guy holding a swastika because I didn't identify myself because my star was turned around. Because I initially wanted to be like a little bit undercover, although people started to try and figure me out based on what I was asking.
So what did you ask him?
I said, where did you get the sign? And he said that at a prior march, they had handed a whole bunch of them out.
So somebody had gone to the effort and expense of printing these officially and handing them out to people?
Someone went to the printer or a print shop and printed out like at least 50, if not more, pictures of Bibi with a swastika and a Hitler mustache, which is quite an effort. But it also means that a lot of these signs are very much floating around, and it wouldn't surprise me if they continue to surface at these protests. And
did you challenge him on that?
Oh, no. I think if I maybe had someone else with me, like filming with me, and I wasn't by myself, maybe I would have been a bit gutsier, but no, I definitely not. I think it just blows my mind that it actually got to this point,
So were you a bit afraid in that respect?
Yeah, it was scary. And hearing Corbyn speak, like how charismatic he was, like it kind of blows my mind that I was in the same space as Jeremy Corbyn at any point in history. Like, I don't know, it was weird. He's such a good speaker. Like, I don't know, it was like hearing Hitler speak. It was just insane. I was like, but I just had this, I kind of had to get out of there because I had this sort of overwhelming feeling of like, I guess, doom. I was just kind of, because the thing is, the march against anti-Semitism was really encouraging for me. And I'm trying to remember that, and I try to remember that a lot. But seeing all this, like I had gone out of my way to avoid these for months, and I, like many people, had just avoided central London on weekends, and I willingly put myself in the eye of the hurricane, and I want to point that out. But I was just like, just to actually see in the flesh, it's different from seeing it online. Everyone is seeing this. Everyone, all around the world. People in Israel are seeing this. Jews in New York are seeing this. In California, all over the world, they are watching. London, specifically. And the lack of policing. And really, that's kind of the difference. I don't think that London is necessarily a more anti-Semitic environment than anywhere else. It's just the lack of policing that makes it so much worse. British Jews do not have to accept this. No one has to accept this. Swastikas are bad. Okay? Like, they don't need context.
My perception, I want to know if you think this is accurate, is that the police have had this tendency to carry out a kind of policing which is not what many people expect. So they seem to be there to facilitate freedom of expression, however gross that expression is, as long as it is arguably within the law. So that's a lot of qualifiers. I think that what they've basically been saying in this ongoing debate is that these protests or marches have to stay within the law. So when somebody shows overt or specific support for Hamas, which is a proscribed terror organization, that's illegal and therefore they should get arrested. But when somebody shows something deeply offensive or shocking, it has to be evaluated by its context as to whether or not it is illegal before they can be arrested. And that in the meantime, what the police's role seems to be is to stop altercations, to stop any tensions spiraling so that people end up in fights and there's violence. And that seems to me to be the way they decide whether these are peaceful marches or not. If there are no massive fights, they call it a peaceful march. But I think for there to be no massive fights because people were scared off the streets while those people walked through them with swastikas, I think it's rather a false measure.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that, that's not, if you're scared to be there, that's not peace. I think peaceful is when anyone can walk by and not feel scared. It's not about Israel. This is not about Israel at all. This is about swastikas. Like, I just want to make that so clear. Yeah, this is not a matter of politics. This is about swastikas.
And just before we tie it up, because I'm very grateful to you for making the time to explain it all, can you tell me and people watching just what a swastika is?
A swastika is a symbol that once was, I think it came from India, but since its usage in World War II, it's pretty indisputably a symbol of Nazism. And since its usage, that's its context. It does not require context. And if you pair it with a Hitler mustache, I think it's quite plainly a symbol of hatred, not towards Jews, but again, anyone who was persecuted in the Holocaust, but especially Jews. So yeah, that's what a swastika is.
And do you think it has any place on the streets of London?
No, I don't. I don't think it has any place anywhere except maybe World War II museums.
Jocelin, thanks very much for taking the time to speak with me.
Of course. Thank you.